With WrestleMania now upon us and that awesome main event that we're about to get, it's time to think about some of those other main events that were just so special that doing them once at the Showcase of the Immortals just wasn't enough, because those are the topic of this episode. Because today... it wouldn't suck if you subscribed. Now, let's carry on. Okay, so what this video is really focusing on is those WrestleMania main events that were just so grand that they ended up happening again at a subsequent WrestleMania. But that's not to say that there aren't still some other matches out there that don't 100% fit this criteria, but they still do bear mention anyway because they're well close enough. What kind of matches are these? Well, let's get to our first entry. First up, we have John Cena versus The Miz. Now, at WrestleMania 27, this was not exactly the best received main event in WrestleMania history, especially since The Rock was there to really set up his match against Cena the following year, which we will be talking about later on. But as unfavorable as this WrestleMania main event might be, it still got something of a repeat at WrestleMania 33, where John Cena teamed up with his then girlfriend Nikki Bella to take on The Miz, but this time he was partnered up with his wife Maurice. And so, while this wasn't the same exact match twice, these two still went at it more than once at the Show of Shows. And another difference is, at WrestleMania 33, The Miz was surprisingly over, which really just goes to show you what a difference 6 years can make. So this entry is going to bring us to our next entry in something of a 2-for-1 special, as here we have Randy Orton and Triple H, who main evented WrestleMania 25. Now the two would square off against each other for the WWE Championship. This came as the result of Randy Orton eliminating Triple H himself at that year's Royal Rumble, therefore giving him a shot at the title at WrestleMania. However, Hunter would wind up winning the title at the Elimination Chamber. This resulted in Trips retaining the title at WrestleMania yet again, and Orton going home empty-handed. However, don't feel too bad for him, as he did get to win the WWE Championship the year before in a triple threat match against Triple H and John Cena. But even though this triple threat wasn't the main event of that year's WrestleMania, it still is something of a repeat from a main event for the year before. This triple threat match took place 2 years after John Cena and Triple H went one-on-one against each other for the last match of WrestleMania 22, where John Cena would retain against Triple H, who was trying to get his title shot at WrestleMania by winning that year's Royal Rumble, but wasn't able to do so as that year was won by Rey Mysterio. But as a result of Rey going for the world title, a #1 contendership tournament was held in order to determine who would face off against the Doctor of Thugonomics. Hunter would advance to the finals of the Road to WrestleMania tournament, and he would defeat Rob Van Dam and The Big Show in order to get his shot. Going back to WrestleMania 25, a lot of people felt that the match of The Undertaker going against Shawn Michaels should have been the main event of that year's Mania. Well, for the people who felt that way, they got their wish the following year at WrestleMania 26, where the two would go one-on-one against each other, putting the streak versus the career on the line. This led to Shawn Michaels retiring for a number of years, only to return for Saudi Arabia. And we all know just how swimmingly that went. But personally, I'm not too sure what the difference is, because I say Shawn Michaels always sucked. And here we have another technicality. As recently mentioned, the first WrestleMania main event ever was a tag team match pitting Roddy Piper and his tag partner Paul Orndorff against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. And then, in a reverse from our previous entry, Mr. T and Roddy Piper would go one-on-one against each other at the following WrestleMania. But this time it would be in a boxing match. Now, this led to many stories about how Mr. T and Roddy Piper didn't exactly get along. But whether it's real or kayfabe doesn't matter to me, because the aggression looks so good on camera. And so sure, the less boxing I get in WWF is always the better. I say if I absolutely have to have a boxing match at WrestleMania and I have to have a celebrity involved in pro wrestling, well, it's hard to do better than Mr. T, given the circumstances. Alright, I want to be the first to say that there is no such thing as a double main event, and as far as I'm concerned, the real main event of a show is always the last match on that show. But maybe there's one exception. Now technically, this wasn't actually the last match of the night at WrestleMania 9, because Yokozuna, after defeating Bret Hart for the WWF Championship, would challenge Hulk Hogan for some reason. However, Bret vs. Yoko was the advertised main event bout, so you know what, I'm counting it. And while Yokozuna would pull double duty at that WrestleMania, he would do the same thing the following year at WrestleMania 10, where he faced off against Lex Luger earlier in the night, only to then face Bret Hart one more time at the Showcase of the Immortals for the WWF World title, but this time it would be Bret that would come out on top. Oh, and also, side note, I want to say that whatever the last match is of night 1 is not a WrestleMania main event. The main event is the last match of the show, even if that takes 2 days to get there. And here we have Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, a match that happened at WrestleMania not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. Now, the original advertised main event for WrestleMania 31 was Royal Rumble winner Roman Reigns taking on the Beast. But as I'm sure many of us recall, Seth Rollins was brought in because WWE got cold feet when it came to Roman Reigns, and we would get the heist of the century, turning this main event match into a triple threat. However, just 3 years later, and Roman Reigns and Brock would go at it yet again, this time for the WWE Universal title. And if that wasn't enough, they would main event for a 3rd time at WrestleMania 38. This time it would be championship versus championship to unify both belts. And somehow, despite all of these matches, there were still some people out there who thought last year's main event was going to be a good match. I'm still laughing at all of you. On to Batista vs. Triple H. Now, these two would main event WrestleMania 21 after Batista finally turned on Triple H, dissolving the faction known as Evolution once and for all. Or at least for a little while, because they ended up reuniting multiple times. However, during the last time they reunited, Batista and Triple H would get into a little bit of beef yet again. This would of course lead to the two wrestling against each other, but this time it was at WrestleMania 35. And while Batista would win the title and defeat Triple H at WrestleMania 21, he would end up counting the lights for trips at WrestleMania 35. One of the first truly legendary matchups in WrestleMania history would have to be Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. While this did occur at the 3rd WrestleMania, it took about this long before the main event started to feel right, as this was one of the most epic matches that there ever was. And it was so good in fact that they had to repeat it again the following year in the WrestleMania title tournament. Now sure, from a technical standpoint this match is nothing special, but it's still a great example of how storytelling and spectacle can really do a lot to get fans invested. And while I mentioned earlier that Piper and T was technically a repeat, this is the first true match with no caveats to main event a WrestleMania and then get done again at another one. And now it comes down to this, the once-in-a-lifetime match that, well, wasn't. At WrestleMania 28, which is the highest grossing WWE pay-per-view of all time, we saw in the last match of the night John Cena take on The Rock, which of course came at the expense of CM Punk and Chris Jericho's WWE title match. But anyway, Cena and Rock would get to main event, which some have speculated was the result of Rock and Hogan not getting the main event at WrestleMania 18. What can I say, Chris Jericho just has the weirdest luck. Now, while this initial match wasn't for the WWE title and was set up the year before at WrestleMania 27, at WrestleMania 29, Cena and The Rock would get to go at it yet one more time, but for the WWE Championship. And while The Rock might have been victorious after their first encounter, it would be John Cena to have his hand held high after round 2. Oh, and real quick, an honorable mention goes to Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton. While they never main evented a WrestleMania, they did compete at WrestleMania 33 for the WWE Championship, and then they faced each other again at WrestleMania 37. And both times featured some, kooky Bray Wyatt nonsense, but anyway, just thought I'd point it out. If ever there was a WrestleMania main event worthy of replication, it would be The Rock vs Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like Hogan and Andre, it may not be a technical marvel, but it just has so much gravitas going into it as it features two of wrestling's biggest all-time megastars going at it one-on-one. And while they did this match at WrestleMania 15 and then again at WrestleMania 17, Stone Cold Steve Austin would opt to repeat the match yet one more time at WrestleMania 19 for his retirement bout. Of course, he would come back at WrestleMania 38 in what was a surprisingly alright match. But as solid as KO and Stone Cold was, let's remember the trilogy of matches that was so great it got to be featured at WrestleMania not once, not twice, but on 3 separate occasions. And unlike Brock and Roman, these 3 matches were actually good. Well, there you have it, WrestleMania main events that got duplicated at other WrestleManias. Are there any I missed? Let me know down in the comments, and please make sure that you like this video and that you subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, Dave knows.